We got John in Melbourne, Florida.
Hey guys.
How you doing?
Hey.
Pretty good. I can understand the emotional objection to like a murderer or whatnot.
That's fine.
But you understand what I'm saying? We got.
For crying out loud.
There we go.
I was talking about anybody who would advocate that person X deserves to be tortured forever in hell or annihilated simply because they could not believe something for which there was insufficient evidence. While some other
subjects of hell, I agree.
of course you don't, because it shows the weakness of what you're saying. You're saying that God brought you into this world, He can take you out. God is the ultimate boss. It's absurd, and you fundamentally know it.
I'm saying I agree with you for the sake of argument. I'm not going to get into the subject of hell because that's a completely different subject. I'm not trying to dodge it. But what I'm saying is we can't limit God's judgment to only rapists and murderers.
I didn't ever say that. I didn't ever say that.
You're applying it. You're saying, how could a rapist or a murderer have a deathbed conversion while like me or you?
I gave a specific example that showed the high contrast. Now, let me give a slightly different...
I think you're limiting the judgment power of God. He can judge all of us.
And I say He can't judge any of us, whether He exists or not.
Okay.
There you go. I mean, if you're not going to let me, if you're not going to actually address this seriously, I didn't say that God was limited in what He could judge by those standards. I'm assuming, hey, if there is a God and He judges me by those standards, I can't tell Him He can't. Obviously, He's the one with the power. He's the mafia boss who can break my legs. All I can say is I don't accept those standards. I don't find them just. I find it absurd to find anybody who claims that they're just. I'm not saying who He can and can't judge because I don't have that power over Him, except for the fact that He's a fictional being as far as I'm concerned. But what I'm saying is that if there's a person, I mean, it makes this type of system is a dictatorship, a fiat that makes all crimes, all sins, which I reject that concept, but all wrongs equal, and everybody begins with this pitiful, poor state of being worthless and in need of redemption from before they were born, even. And those who don't believe the unbelievable are somehow punished. If that's the way the system actually works, and I have no reason to think that this is true, but if that's the way the system actually works, then my assessment is that it is immoral. And I don't, I'm baffled by people who could claim that it's moral. And yet people like you who don't actually come out and say, oh, it's definitely a moral system. What you do is you say, God is God. He can judge you. What a lame-ass excuse is that? If my dad beat me when I didn't do anything wrong, and your answer was, well, he's your dad. He gets to beat you. You're a dick.
That's the whole thing is, let me get this last thing in, and you can say whatever you want.
You betcha.
The whole thing, and you can tell by your own conscience, we all do something wrong. I'm not saying everything is equal. I'm not saying murder is the same deed as thinking how much you hate somebody. But what is God?
But the Bible says that.
Hold on. But what is God to do when we have thoughts like that, or we do things that we sin in our own way? We don't have to be a Jeffrey Dahmer to be a sinner, is what I'm saying. And I'm not putting a guilt trip on you, but you know as well as I do that we're imperfect. None of us are perfect.
I never said we weren't.
Okay, but that implies we all break some kind of moral standard. That's why we're all held accountable, and that's why our actions can't get us out of it, because by nature we do these things. And that's why, and the whole story of God is not that He's going to break our legs, He sent Christ for us.
Oh, bullshit.
No,
bullshit. No, you're done. You're done. That is the biggest. That is the excuse. That's the mafia boss saying, "I'm going to break your legs unless Jesus is the unless in the story."
Well, unless you pay me would be the mafia boss, and that's what Jesus would represent.
Jesus is the loophole. Jesus is the unless in the story. It does not make God moral. It does not make the biblical story become suddenly valiant and worthy of respect.
Well, in fact, killing somebody that is admittedly innocent in order to compensate for the
None
crime
of us
someone
are
else
innocent,
did.
though. That's what I just
But
said.
She's
people
talking
claim
about Jesus.
Jesus.
Oh, I'm
To
sorry.
slaughter an innocent person and say, well, that's just recompense for the crap you did, that's not moral either.
Plus, it's absurd, this idea of blood sacrifice.
It is. How in the world does bleeding make somebody that did something wrong all of a sudden not
You've
be
got
wrong?
this. You've got this system that I say is immoral, and you think that the correction to this is for God to sacrifice himself to himself as a loophole for rules that he created that were unjust, and that this makes the rules just? That's crazy.
I think at the end of the day, we all still sin. We all know we're all imperfect. But your mafia scenario is, I don't think it's accurate. You're saying the mafia boss is saying, I'll break your legs or else.
Yeah.
I'm saying the mafia boss has every right to break your legs, but he doesn't.
Okay.
Fine,
you're done. I hung
But
up.
he does.
The mafia boss does not have every right
Unless
to break
you
my
pay.
legs. I'm sorry that your religion has so polluted your brain that you're unable to actually see what is immoral about what you're thinking. But that statement from you sums up everything that I tried to say 10 minutes ago. The mafia boss does not have every right to break his legs. And the moral and just thing to do is to stand up and say, no, you don't. And if somebody is asserting that they're working for a mafia boss and this mafia boss doesn't even necessarily exist and they want you to pay, which is exactly what's happening here because we have no reason to think that this God exists. I don't care if he does, this particular God that you're talking about. It doesn't matter. It's immoral. It's nonsense. It's immoral and it's nonsense. He doesn't have the right to break my legs. He doesn't have the right to judge me. And if he does so, if he happens to exist and do this, by standards that I happen to think are immoral, then he's a dick. I may not be able to do anything to stop him, but the ant can't do anything to stop me from squishing it. But it doesn't make me any less of a dick. How dare you come on here and apologize for it and shuffle actual comments that you and I both know. You know what's right and wrong. And shuffle it off as, oh, you have a conscience and you've sinned. Okay, well, that's irrelevant. We haven't even talked about that yet, about how I reject this notion of sin, or that, as Tracy pointed out earlier, that thinking something is somehow wrong. And then you come on and, no, Jesus is the excuse. Let me tell you something. According to the Bible, God basically chucked everybody into the pool and said, I got a life preserver. Anybody want to not drown? He's ultimately responsible. The story, and I agree, I'm getting worked up, and it's not because I think that there's any truth to the story. It's that I'm so freaking offended and pissed off that there are people out there who take this fairy tale and make excuses for it and say that this is something good that people should be applying to their lives, or that we should make 2010 the year of the Bible. Listen to yourselves. I'm more moral than that, and so are you, and you guys need to just own it. It's insane. Ugh.